We've been talking about news media manipulation, fear porn, and conspiracy theories for at least 4 years. But manipulation goes far deeper into our everyday lives than these stories suggest. The fact is, we're being manipulated every day by our boss, coworkers, friends, family, and even our most intimate partners. What we may not be aware of is that there's only about 6 factors that are used to manipulate. And if you know them, you can actually reduce how much you are manipulated. Manipulation is a dirty word, but the truth is we all do it. And much of the time, it's so natural we don't even think about what we're doing. That means we're constantly being manipulated by people who may or may not even know that they're doing it. Neuroscience and social psychology disciplines have identified 5+1 triggers that are used to manipulate us. All humans have them, but we differ in our sensitivity to each. The triggers happen to nicely fit into the acronym SAFETY, which neuroscientist Dan Radecki, through the Academy of Brain-Based Leadership, has discussed at length in the book Psychological Safety. So what are these triggers? Well, there's security, the need for consistency, certainty, and no change. Autonomy, the need for the perception that we have control over our environment. Fairness, the need for equal exchanges. Esteem, the need for position in the social hierarchy. Trust, the need to be part of a group which is like us. And finally, you, which is a very personal set of triggers that were built through culture, religion, or personal experience. This last group of triggers is a bit of a wild card. I mean, obviously Muslims will have a different set of triggers than a Catholic, but do Buddhists actually have triggers? I'll have to ask the Dalai Lama the next time that we talk. Well, anyways, so we have personal triggers, but they're far from being common between cultures and belief systems, and can be very specific and individual. A famous example that would likely not work today is the Trojan horse. I mean, come on. Your massive and undefeated enemies decide to spend a lot of time building a colossal horse statue, and then you decide to keep it safe by bringing it inside your own defensive walls without a thorough inspection? And why? A fear of upsetting the gods? Yeah, it was a manipulation technique that obviously worked well during that specific time, but is highly unlikely to work today.
Okay, don't believe in this. What? What?
Anyways, point is, if you have a personal button, you can be sure both your friends and enemies will know that you have it and will use it on you, and probably not for your own personal benefit. The way to know your personal triggers is through a concept that's so old that it's written on Delphic temples in ancient Greece. Know thyself. But beyond knowing your own culture and background, there are another 5 triggers which you have in common with every other person in the world. The question is, how sensitive are you to each? For example, let's take security. If you're very sensitive to the need for consistency, certainty, or no change, then to push your buttons, all somebody has to do is threaten certainty in a single place in your life, or simply make random changes. And that person can drive you crazy and manipulate you for their own benefit. Civil War General George McClellan was a perfect example of how the need for security can be used to benefit your opponent. He was a general who was brilliant at assuring his troops were well supplied, but he refused to fight forces of superior size and handily lost to forces of inferior size. He was viewed by his colleagues and enemies as being far too timid. He was looking for security in war. Good luck. And generals from the Confederacy took clear advantage of him, driving him to both missed opportunities and heavy losses. I know that's a military example, but if you have a high need for security and someone wants to convince you of something, say a product is good or they're the right partner for you, they simply promise certainty through whatever they're offering. Hence the pickup line, "You'll have my everlasting love." Talk about promising certainty and no change. This means certain politicians will use security in their messaging, usually to tell you how their opponent will cause bad change, and how they'll be a champion of stability and getting back to fundamental and unchanging values. Media, they'll run headlines showing you the risks to certainty in your life to grab your attention, and you'll gravitate towards things and ideas that protect you from the uncomfortable feeling that loss or lack of certainty creates. But that's not the end of it. These triggers go both ways. There are people who have a low need for security and wouldn't be bothered by big changes or lack of consistency or certainty. Hence, maybe they even search for change. So this type of personality may be driven to leave a stable job to start their own company. They may be an early adopter of new technology and therefore can be easily manipulatable by offering the newest, latest, and greatest change. A politician may promise them change to a new era. A lover may promise them an adventurous life. A company may offer them the promise of a great new advanced technology, all to manipulate the person who has a low need for security. And these little manipulations extend into everyday life, like imagine how a boss or a parent may modify their approach to a team member or even their child if they know there's a high or low need for security about an upcoming change. Hey Nate, I got some great news. We're going to be making some changes around here, and I really think you're going to enjoy what's coming next. Well, Nate, I have some bad news. We're going to be making some changes around here, and somehow we're going to have to figure out how to adapt ourselves. We tend to instinctively understand how the people we know well will react to upcoming changes, and we use that knowledge to manipulate them in our communications, almost non-consciously. The same goes with high versus low need for autonomy. Were you a person who prefers others to take the lead and you're happy to follow, or are you driven to be the leader? It's easy to see how you'd approach different people about things as simple as the question of what to have for dinner or where to go on vacation based on their sensitivity to the need to perceive themselves to have control over their environment. Of course, not all of the manipulation you do is nefarious, but the fact you change your approach in order to achieve a specific outcome from another person is a type of manipulation. For example, fairness. Do you have a deep need to see and be part of fair exchanges? What will you do if you're confronted with unfair exchanges or manipulations? What language could somebody use to bring you over to their side of an argument and turn you into their soldier when fairness is concerned? Should somebody change their language to make something seem more fair in order to get a deal done? Would you use that tactic? Or how about using esteem, which is so fundamental that Professor Jordan Peterson talks about how our drive for hierarchical position goes back in evolutionary history to a time where we were related to lobsters. We have a special brain network for evaluating our position in the social hierarchy, and it's searching for that information multiple times a second. Am I better or worse than you? This is a critical question for all humans. Now, some of us are more sensitive to that trigger than others. That's why some people value brands, sports cars, or big fancy houses in special neighborhoods, or special clubs, or the drive to simply be close to powerful people, while others don't seem to care that much and are able to prioritize other things over their need for esteem. But have you ever looked at the sales force of big consulting companies or pharmaceutical companies or any top salesperson? They all have something in common. They dress to impress. They tend to be tall, handsome, and walk with confidence. Why? Because in general, buying involves status in one form or another. When we buy, we want to buy from someone who we wish to be like, someone with high status who might just be able to raise our own status, maybe through their product or through making them happy by buying their product, which we may subconsciously hope turns them into a friend, hence we're close to a high status person. And finally, trust, which is a need to corral our social group into a tribe, identify the characteristics that make us like each other, and then stay a member of that group. Scientists call this in-group bias, and we have a different brain network for dealing with people who are inside our group compared to those who are outside of our group. The ones who are inside our group have access to empathy, while those outside may not have access to it at all. History is full of this trigger being used to manipulate people. In fact, anytime you hear about a genocide, all it takes is a portion of the population to put another portion of the population into an outgroup box. And once that happens, empathy is turned off, and the leadership simply needs to be pushing some propaganda to dehumanize the other group. From there, the first group will gladly exterminate the other group. In fact, this trigger and its implications are so widely known that if you're trained on what to do in case you're held hostage, you'll learn to find some common ground with your abductor. This common ground may help them change the part of the brain they use in evaluating you, making you a part of their in-group, hence open the door to empathy and therefore increases your chance for survival. Unsurprisingly, the exact same trick is used by salespeople or anyone who wants to get close to you. The first thing they do is look for common ground so they can get you to move them into your in-group so you deal with them as a friend, not a foe. Multi-level marketing groups sidestep this difficult process by simply building an expanding community that sells to the people they're already friends with. These 5 triggers are common to all humans, and you are certainly no exception. If you think about your friends and family, you can probably determine who is high and low on each domain. This is because it's easy to see these things in others, but it can be hard to identify them accurately in ourselves. But you can be sure that others can see them just as clearly in you as you can see them in them. which means as long as you're less aware of your triggers than others, you're always vulnerable to manipulation. And though I'm sure there's no way to completely avoid being manipulated, after all, we're all only human, we can learn more about what triggers us and watch out for these 5 triggers and where they show up in our lives. If you want to learn how to reduce your vulnerability to manipulation by safety triggers, I'll put some links to some resources below that you may find useful. So which of the safety triggers do you think you're most easily manipulated by? I look forward to reading your comments below. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to click on the thumbs up icon and share, and be sure to subscribe. Subscribing assures you don't miss out on upcoming content and supports this channel in making more and better content. So until next time, stay awesome and enjoy the journey.